Hello and welcome back. It's time to discover locking layers. How fun! Basically, there are a few ways you can lock your layers. You can lock your transparent pixels, which basically means like if you got something on your layer and then the rest of it's blank, you can say like only let me paint where there's already been painted. We'll show you some cool examples when you can use that. You can lock the position of a layer, so if you just don't want it to move, you can lock that down. Like if you got a really nice design, you're just like, okay, this part of it, don't move, I'll just mess with this rest part. It's a good way to secure that. Or you can just totally lock a layer, which means that you can't touch it at all. You can't make any changes, you can't paint on it, you won't be able to move it. And that can be really helpful if you're sending a layer, sending something off to someone and you're like, hey, don't touch this, you can lock those layers. So let's go ahead and show you guys how to use it. I'm going to start off by opening up some images here in Photoshop. So let's go to our sample images, chapter 2, and we're at section 10. We're doing so well. Now I'm going to go ahead and load up. We have a JPEG and a few PNGs. There we go. And if it asks you this, just hit assign profile sRGB and then convert to working document. All right, for all of those. Perfect. Okay, now in this case we're using some of these little icons from the Noun project. So I'm going to use my move tool and just shift click and drag from one image to another. There we go. We're going to make a little fake ad for like a hotel. There we go. And let's go ahead and close these out and hit F for full screen. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I just need to layer mask away because we can see it has the little credits in here. So I'm just going to click on my layer mask and invert that on these layers just so we can, I want to make sure to include the credits so you guys, so we properly credit the artist, but in this case we don't need them in the image. So I'm just going to layer mask these out. There we go. And you can see I'm just making a selection, creating a layer mask, and then we just invert that layer mask. Okay, perfect. So now let's go ahead and we're just going to start with this little TV icon. I'm going to hit Controller Command A to select everything. We're going to center it in our photo. So let's center it vertically and horizontally. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at our different locks. So the first lock, all the locks are located here. There's just a few of them. We'll just hover right over there. The first part is lock transparent pixels. Now you'll notice as I move this layer around, it has transparent pixels already, right? Like you can see through part of it. If you can see through part of it, that's called transparent. So let's go ahead and put it back where it was. Now in this case, if I just click on this layer and I'm just going to use my brush tool, let's just grab a color here. Okay, let's just make like a little bit of a smaller brush. So I'm just using my regular old brush tool, and in this case I'm just going to paint right here on my layer. So I paint on my layer and it just kind of shows up everywhere. Well, I just masked that area out. Let's go ahead and apply all these layer masks, which will just get rid of them. Okay, so on this layer, basically I can just paint with this tool and it's going to allow me to paint anywhere on this layer. Now, let's say we're in a situation where I want to paint on an icon or part of a layer, but I don't want to be able to paint on the transparent parts. That's where we lock our transparency. So let's go ahead and click on Lock Transparency. And now it's not going to let me paint on any transparent pixels. It's only going to let me paint on areas that actually have detail. And this can be used for a lot of really cool things. For instance, if I grab my gradient tool, let's go to a gradient and I'm just going to, let's just expand this out just a little bit. Okay, let's create a foreground to transparent gradient and hit OK. So our foreground to transparent gradient, let's make it a linear gradient, and now I'm just going to choose like a dark blue. So I'm going to go from the bottom to the top, and here we have a really nice dark blue to green icon. Let's get a green here, a little bit. There we go. We can kind of come in here from the top to the bottom again on that and have some fun with our icon. So you can obviously do all kinds of fun things. You can just paint on it. Let's just grab there we go. Let's grab a really light green color. You could paint on it and just have it be visible here. Basically anything you can think of doing to this layer, it's just going to show up on the layer itself. It's not going to show up on any transparent pixels. So let's go ahead and apply that same color to all of these icons. Okay, because I've got this color in my foreground here. I've got all my icons ready to go. So I'm just going to make sure I lock the transparency on all those. Okay, and I'm going to hit Shift Delete, and I'm going to choose to fill that with my foreground color. And again, because I locked my transparent pixels, it's only going to let me fill in that area. So that's how we lock our transparent pixels, and this is probably the lock that I use most often. Now our next lock will actually lock the image pixels, so you can still move your layer around, but you can't paint anything on it. So let's go ahead back to our layer here. I'm going to turn off my, there we go, transparent pixel lock, and we're just going to turn on our regular pixel lock, and I'm going to try to paint with our brush tool. So let's hit B for the brush tool, and you see I just have a big X here. This is basically saying, hey, you can't paint anything on that layer. And if I try clicking there, it's going to say you can't use this because this layer is locked. So basically, if you have any artwork that's finalized and you don't want anything painted over it, whether it's you doing it by accident or you send this file off to someone else and you don't want them to do it, this is a great way to lock those pixels in place. So our next lock is a position lock, and this will just lock the position of the layer. You can still edit the contents of it, but you won't be able to move it. So let's go ahead back here into Photoshop, and I'm going to just take off all of our locks. Let's just make all these layers visible. Okay, let's remove all these locks. There we go. And I'm just going to move these. You know what? First, let's go ahead and start. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller. So let's just scale them down just a little bit. There we go. And now this layer here, let's just bring that right over there. Okay. Perfect and perfect. So now I just want to make sure these are aligned a little bit better. So I'm going to hold Control or Command, and I'm going to click on my Move tool and left align those. Okay. I'm going to left align these two as well. There we go. And now let's see, we have our coffee. So I'm just going to type in coffee. This is our bed. Alright, this is our pool, and this is the TV. Okay, so now the pool and the coffee, I want those, there we go, the pool and the coffee, I'm going to hold Control or Command and click on those. Okay, I want those to be centered aligned. There we go. And the bed and the TV, I want those to be center aligned as well. So now we have really nice icons there. Now I'm going to go ahead and Control or Command click all those. I'm going to group them by hitting Control or Command G. Let's hit Control or Command A to select everything, and then use our alignment tools to have that center aligned right there. There we go. So this is a really nice setup for some icons or some little bullet points or something like that. So if you wanted to lock the position of those, you can shift click on all those and lock the positions. So if you try to grab your Move tool and move them around, it's not going to let you at all. So if you decide on the position you want something, this is a perfect way to do this. Now we're going to go one step further. I'm just going to write some little headlines here. So let's just hit the T for the type tool. All right, and there we go. Breakfast included. Let's go ahead and scale that down. All right, looking good. We need to choose a different font. I'm just going to choose Helvetica New. It's kind of like my go-to. If I just need something to look good and I don't want to think about it, I'm just yeah, Helvetica New looks pretty good. All right, there we go. Breakfast included. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Control or Command J to duplicate that. All right. King bed. We're just making a little ad. All right, let's duplicate that. Cable TV, and we'll say private pool. Okay, so now that we've done that, I just want to move my entire group off to the left here, but first I need to unlock those layers because I locked the, there we go, I locked the position. So let's unlock the position of those. I'm going to take my entire group and move this off to the left. So this is looking pretty good. I just want to do a little bit more cleanup on these little icons and everything. So for starters, my my layers are just pretty large. So I'm going to right click on here and I'm going to change this back to small thumbnails. Just allows me to see a little bit more, So let's go to my coffee, and then here we have our breakfast included. So these two layers, let's go ahead and center align those. There we go. And yep, that looks pretty good. Let's group those together. So Control or Command G. All right, our bed and our king bed, let's center align those and group those together. Okay, our pool and pool, so that's the logo and the text. We're going to center align those and group those. There we go. And the TV, we'll center align those and group those as well. And then I'm going to hit Control or Command A and then just bring this all to the center. Okay, now this looks really good. Let's go ahead and create a new layer under here, and I'm going to use my gradient tool. Let's go to our foreground to transparent gradient, and I'm just going to make my foreground color black. So we'll just go something like this. That looks pretty good. And now, let's say, you know what, this looks pretty good, but what I want to do is just change the color of these icons. I want to make them blue. So we're just going to go back into each of these layers here. There we go. And our coffee and our bed, I'm just holding Control or Command, clicking on all these, and I'm just going to lock, there we go, the transparent pixels. And then our pool, let's just choose this nice blue as our foreground color. I'm going to hold Alt or Option Delete. And that's going to give us our fill. There we go. It's like super light color. So I can just go back here and I can just fill these layers, which would normally, you know, if I just ran a fill on a normal layer, it would just fill the entire layer. But because we've locked the transparent pixels, it's just going to be that part of the layer, which I think looks really, really nice. Okay, so here we have all of our different groups, and we're looking really, really good. So if we do want to go ahead and lock our position, unfortunately you can't lock the position of an entire group, but we're going to move on to our very last, and this is just a complete lock. So a total lock, let's see what it, just hover over there, lock all, that's what it's called. This will basically lock everything. You won't be able to move it, you won't be able to edit the contents of it. This is a complete lock, and this is really helpful in times, again, when you deliver something to your clients and you don't want them to edit at all. Okay, so we're going to say that looks great. This little gradient here in the background, let's go ahead and put a position lock on that. Our background, by the way, will already come with a position lock. So anytime you have a background, you can see that little lock. That's just a position lock that keeps you from moving your background and just showing transparent pixels behind it. All right, so now this would be a really good time to deliver this to your client. They won't be able to actually affect anything in here until they unlock it. Or if you did want to let them, for instance, change what this said, but you didn't want it to change where the position, you could just lock the position of it, and then you would change the test image, but you wouldn't be able to move it because it's got a position lock, because it's basically you're just making sure that you or someone else can't mess up that document. So there's one more lock, and this has to do with artboards. And artboards are basically used for creating device previews. Like if you wanted to create how a website would look like on an iPhone versus an iPad versus a device, you could do those layouts with artboards. So I'm just going to create a new document here. Let's just make 1500 by 1500 pixels. Looks great. Now we're going to go to our artboard tool, which is right here under your Move tool. And I'm just going to go to, let's say, an iPhone 6 Plus. There we go. That's our artboard there. Let's add another one, and this is going to be the iPad mini. There we go. So we have two artboards here, and now I'll just take this photo from our background and we'll move it over to this document. Okay, so now we have this photo, and you can see this is only showing up over my artboard number 2. You can see it's inside of the artboard. Now, if I move this over here, okay, sometimes it will kind of nest in and out of other artboards. So you can see the image itself went over to this other artboard, and now it's super confusing to get it back, because I'm try to go over there. And if I put it over here, it'll pop in and out of other artboards. So again, if you're using artboards and you don't want your images to go in and out of other artboards just by clicking and dragging on them, things like this, because it is kind of annoying, to be honest, just click on this little lock and this will lock that. So I can put it over here and it's not going to try to put it in any other artboard. It's just going to keep it back where it was. There we go. So I can like put it over here. You can't see it, but it is in fact over there. All right. Now, generally, artboards are not used extensively, but if you do find yourself using artboards and you don't want your images to wander from one artboard to another, that's where this lock comes in handy. So that's the idea with locking your layers. So the big one is the transparency lock. That will just help you change colors of whatever's on a layer, and it'll just keep the transparent pixels transparent. Now, if you don't want anything to move, you can use that position lock. You can use the lock all, which is just like a great way to send images to clients because they can't actually change anything. And if you're using artboards, you've got your artboard lock as well. All right, guys, join us in our next video. I'm going to show you how to search and filter through different layers.